Throughout your playthrough in Ready or Not, you're bound to encounter at least one of the game's various factions. Perhaps you'll fight drug manufacturers affiliated with the Los Locos gang, or maybe you've already had the distinct displeasure of bumping into local terrorist cell The Hand. In short, Los Sueños is absolutely chock full of bad guys, and as we progress through the game's missions, we'll see that for ourselves firsthand. Something interesting about some of these groups, though, is that not all of these situations are so morally black and white. In fact, there are some cases where we'll actually find ourselves sympathizing for the criminals that we're chasing. Their motivations feel human, and if we put ourselves in their shoes, we might be able to understand where they're coming from. And today, I wanted to talk about one of these sorts of groups. One that, while completely wrong in their actions, don't necessarily seem to fall underneath of that term of evil that we see with some of the other groups. So without further ado, please make yourself comfortable, grab yourself something to drink, and accompany me as we investigate the Left Behind. Now, this story starts out when we receive a call for urgent response into downtown Los Sueños. Sitting U.S. Senator and presidential hopeful Cornelius Fremont was finishing up a rally at Brisa Cove Memorial Park when suddenly the unthinkable happened. Multiple rifle shots rang out from the 12th story of the neighboring luxury apartment complex. A sniper, or snipers, had taken several shots at the senator, and while luckily no civilians were injured, Senator Fremont has been struck in the upper body and is currently clinging to life at a nearby hospital. The shooters are yet to have been captured and are suspected of still being within the apartment building. It seems that rather than fleeing the scene, they've instead chosen to hunker down, suggesting that they might be packing quite the arsenal. LSPD has managed to clear the entire building up until the 12th floor, but now, needing to actually engage with these men, our squad D platoon is sent in. We initially make our infiltration via the fire exit, and once we get our bearings, we can quickly start to see the extent of this situation. The hallways are littered with bullet holes and shell casings. Broken glass and other debris crunch beneath our feet, and we can even see where some of the vending machines have been rearranged to serve as makeshift cover. Whether this was done by the residents or the shooters, though, remains uncertain. It appears that the Left Behind has completely taken over the 12th floor, and at this point, I think it's safe to assume that the tenants here are being used as their hostages. Something also worth noting before we progress much further is that the intruders have booby-trapped the entire 12th floor. This mission in particular has always really irritated me because I always get about halfway through it and forget to check a door, and suddenly my team is dead and I am dead, and it makes me really angry. So please do yourself a favor and make sure you check every door before opening it. Now, aside from these traps being placed all over the place, we also need to watch out for the enemies themselves. These men aren't your run-of-the-mill active shooters. These are experienced combat veterans, and as such, they're much better equipped to fight in an environment such as this. Anyways, if we make our way down the right side of the hallway, we'll encounter the first of several rooms that we'll need to clear. Apartment 1204. Inside of it, we'll find an eccentrically decorated living room, which is filled with these stand-up glass panels. And while these are pretty to look at, they completely ruin our line of sight in the other areas of the apartment, even providing cover to some of our enemies. So we need to operate with an air of caution. Once we manage to clear this room, though, we can begin to look around a bit and investigate. And here we can start to piece together an interesting little side plot that follows alongside this mission. The first item we find is a note on the ground in the kitchen, which reads, "Are you serious? Do you have any idea how expensive these things are? You couldn't have just settled for some fabric?" And on the counter, we can see a receipt for what this note is referring to. There is a bill for $2,500 for the transport of those big glass panels that we saw earlier. The cost here is simply for transportation, so there's no telling how expensive the panels themselves cost. After looking around a bit more, it's clear that the elderly couple here is in the middle of a pretty nasty divorce. The wife is the one who purchased these panels, and she's been using them as a means to keep the apartment divided. In the bedroom, we can find a note written by the wife that reads, "Eric, don't stand in this area. Keep your damn things out of it." And here we can also find the couple's bed, and on it we can see a pillow labeled hers. In the middle of the headboard we can see a small cross made out of tape, dividing the bed into two halves. It seems that the couple had tried to at least stay in the same bed as one another, but eventually things soured further, and the wife kicked the husband out to the couch. We can even find the labeled his pillow sitting on the sofa in the living room, which is a pretty nice touch. Here we can also look at the portraits of the family, all of which show the husband's face covered with black tape. The whole relationship here seems to be incredibly toxic, and the further that we look, the worse it gets. Around the living room, we can find not so subtle books labeled, "So, Your Husband's a Loser, Diary of a Bored Wife," and The Distinguished Independent Woman's Guide. Tucked away between two of the dividers, we can also find a small chair, and on the nearby table, there sits a fire escape map of the apartment complex. Now, I initially thought that these little writings on it were from the intruders, but this was actually written here by the wife. She was tracking her husband's movements, waiting for him to leave, so she had the opportunity to do something, and will quickly come to realize that that something is someone. The next door neighbor. You see, some of these apartments are actually connected to each other via adjoining rooms. And while her husband has been away at work or running errands, the wife has been having an affair with their neighbor. In the neighbor's apartment, we can find protection sitting on a nearby nightstand. And in the bathroom, we can see where the wife has written him a love note on the mirror in lipstick, which reads, "Don't be a stranger. Love is only an adjoining door away." In his living room, we can also find another note that reads, "When can I see you again? I had a lovely time. Don't mind my husband. He is as soft as they come," which only further twists the knife here. At the time of our arrival, though, it seems that the husband has finally found out about this affair. We can see a man's clothes strewn all over the bedroom floor, as if someone had to leave here in a hurry. We can also find another note, this time from the husband, left in the adjoining room. "Listen here, sailor boy. Don't ever let me catch you around my wife again. If you even glance at her, I'm going to make sure you regret it. You'll meet your Navy friends sooner than you think, scum." In the couple's living room, we can also see a smashed TV, where the husband, likely in a fit of rage, sought something to take his anger out on. But I've gotten a bit ahead of myself here. After all, we're trying to stop a team of ex-military assassins, not serve as marriage counselor. So with that being said, we'll continue clearing the rest of the building. The further that we progress in this mission, the more that we'll start to see the absolute arsenal that these men are carrying with them. While some of the guns that we found aren't too out of the ordinary, the LMGs and other weapons these guys are carrying are. This is in stark contrast to the pistol and shotgun wielding enemies that we've been bumping into in our previous missions. These men have come in here with the clear intent to do damage, and after searching another apartment, we find out why. In the final apartment room is where we'll see the primary attack point these men used. The ex-vets rented out the equivalent of an Airbnb up here, and it was from this vantage point that they took their shots at the senator. The room is covered in graffiti and posters, all of which share the same sentiment, a resounding hatred for some sort of anti-vet bill. It's mentioned in our briefing that the US had recently passed legislation which cuts VA hospital funding, making it impossible for some veterans to get the medical care that they need. This is a topic that we've seen mentioned in some of the other levels too, as the passing of this bill has led to widespread unease all throughout Los Sueños. And who else was behind this bill but Senator Cornelius Fremont? The message that these veterans are trying to send isn't made out of anger so much as it is in desperation. Their signs read things like, "I didn't fight for my country to watch my brothers die of hunger. Don't leave your veterans to die on the street." And finally, and perhaps most poignantly, "We are fucking human." As I mentioned before, these men are all experienced combat veterans. They've seen some of their closest friends die overseas, and now they've returned back home only to have their benefits stripped from them when they need them the most. These are men who objectively deserve medical care. They aren't some scary foreign adversary, they're former US troops. Some of them are even wearing prosthetics at the time time of the attack. And as I said before, while what they're doing is wrong, their motivation and reasoning behind it is very sympathetic. Not being able to get appropriate medical care is a very real issue in the US. And regardless of which side of the political aisle you fall on, I think we can all agree that our healthcare system incentivizes profits over saving human lives. And that's what we're sort of seeing here with this anti-vet bill. A greedy senator looking to reallocate funds to suit his agenda takes it away from the people that need it the most. It just so happens that the people he took it from here, though, were well equipped to get their revenge. However, as much as I want to say that the left behind are the good guys in this situation, they definitely aren't. We can find several bodies throughout this entire floor of the apartment building. These men came in without warning and took over the place. And if somebody happened to get in their way, they were killed. These people had nothing to do with the passing of the bill. They did nothing to wrong these veterans, and yet they were gunned down just the same. That's the thing with vigilantism, right? More often than not, it's incredibly sloppy. And while the perpetrators may be only aiming to hurt one person, they can ruin countless other lives in the process. And while I do feel sympathetic for their cause, their reasoning does not justify these horrific actions. Once we manage to capture the rest of the enemies, though, the mission comes to an end, and we can return back to the police station. And when we arrive, we can take a look at some of the evidence we collected in the evidence room. And some of this paints the entire situation in a brand new light. The first piece we have is a rangefinder that was used by the snipers to gauge the distance that they'd have to shoot. Nothing too out of the ordinary, right? But the other two pieces aren't nearly as simple. The second piece of evidence is a marked map detailing the Left Behind's plan of attack. On it shows the location of different police blockades, as well as the route of the senator's emergency motorcade. As it says on the item's description, quote, "Someone gave them this intel." This piece of information is incredibly interesting to me because it means that someone close to Senator Fremont wants him dead, and they were willing to feed this sensitive intel out to angry ex-military members just to make sure that they got the job done. Our final piece of evidence is also our most ambiguous. In a box, supposedly belonging to one of the suspects, we can see an old photo. 5 mysterious men stand outside of a building marked USIA, the United States Intelligence Agency. And next to this is a suspicious picture of Brisa Cove Memorial Park, the very same park this shooting took place at. Now, I'm not really quite sure what to make of all of this yet. Could the USIA really be involved in this attack? Perhaps this is some sort of false flag maneuver meant to drum up more support for that anti-vet bill. Or maybe it's for something even darker. I can't help but shake the feeling that we're not quite seeing the full picture just yet. Maybe as we progress further into this storyline, we can start to piece together some more answers. What we do know for absolute certain, though, is that the Left Behind tried and failed to assassinate Senator Fremont. And while he managed to escape this situation with his life, we know that he's still very much in danger. Someone close, perhaps even in his security team, willingly leaked intel out to bad actors and stood idly by as someone made an attempt on his life. Perhaps his policy has angered even those working closest to him. Something worth mentioning here is that the title of this mission is Ides of March, famously remembered as the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated. Men that he had thought to be his closest allies turned their backs on him, and I think that's also what's happening here. And while this situation might be over, this certainly isn't the last we've seen of the Left Behind. At the end of the day, I think the Ides of March is one of the best demonstrations of conflicting morality that I have seen. Once you find out about the reasoning behind this attack, you feel sympathetic for it. But then you see the destruction that this attack leaves behind, and you lose that sympathy. This level does a really fantastic job at just fucking with your emotions, and I'm absolutely here for it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this mission, though. Do you understand where the Left Behind are coming from, or are they just a domestic terrorist group with a different coat of paint? You be the judge. Also, before I end things, I just wanted to let you all know that I've opened up an official Discord server for this channel. So if that seems like something up your alley, check out the link in the description below. Finally, an enormous thank you goes out to all of my patrons and channel members. Asterix762, Za, CrankyBox99, Tori Hunter, Neostank, and Alexander. You guys rule, and I appreciate all of your love and support. With all of that being said though, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. You know I love you. I'm out.